Sam Esfandiari. What's up, man? Man, the crazy trade deadline. Obviously, Luka was the big story of it all. But Warriors fans went through an emotional roller coaster.
Right? Much needed. If they were gonna do nothing at the trade deadline, I think I would have lost it because they were one of the most boring watches I have ever seen. And you know what? Jimmy Butler's a lot of things, but the man is not boring. Not at all.
No, he's not. How has the Jimmy experience been so far?
I think he could not have had a better debut. So he wasn't even cleared for shoot around because it was like a 4-team trade, and technically he's not allowed to practice with the team until like everyone passes their physical. So like they're being held up by like Dennis Schroeder in Utah or like Kyle Anderson in Miami or something that had nothing to do with the Warriors. But so he showed up, and I thought it was the perfect debut game. Obviously, he was highly efficient, 25 points on 12 shots, but going down 20-plus points and then being able to navigate the comeback, he was instrumental in it and just did a bunch of things that, quite frankly, no one on the Warriors roster could do. It was like the perfect, if you haven't watched Jimmy Butler, this is what you're getting that you didn't have on the team previously type of debut.
Yeah, and it feels like Steph has a little more pep in his step, and Jimmy even said opposites attract. How do you think those two are going to look moving forward playing together?
So I like the basketball fit in general. I think Steph is an easy teammate to get along with. He's going to try to make it work with whoever he has. So I think that'll work on that front. I do like the basketball fit of the two of them. You know, Steph obviously loves to shoot the three, greatest shooter of all time. He's going to take 15 of them a game. And Jimmy loves to operate around the rim. He had 12 free throws. I can't remember the last time a Warrior player had 12 free throws. You might have to go back to KD to find a guy who did that. So just like someone who puts pressure on the rim, someone who is a good enough passer and just kind of thinks the game the way the Warriors like to play. So I think it's going to work fine. The real question is, do they have the right pieces to fit around the two of them plus Draymond? Because the fit's pretty particular with those three players. I think it can work, but you need kind of the perfect big and the perfect shooting guard. Otherwise, you just don't have enough spacing or size or foot speed. I mean, let's be real. They're all mid-30s. Like, they do require kind of the perfect mix of role guys around them.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you don't want Jimmy, Draymond, and a big that doesn't stretch it, right? You want a guy that could space it. And is there somebody on the buyout market that you could think of that could make happen since the trade deadline has passed?
I mean, it doesn't look like anyone who fits that bill is going to get bought out. Like Chris Boucher in Toronto, there had been rumors that he was going to be on the move, but it didn't happen. And unless something changes, it seems like Toronto is just going to keep him and see if they can re-sign him in the offseason. So in the first game, they went with Quentin Post, who was their second-round pick. And he can't shoot the ball. I mean, he's an older rookie, so it's not like, he's 24, so it's not like a normal rookie in that sense. But I think it's just going to end up with a lot of Draymond at the 5. I think they're going to see how many minutes they can get out of Quentin Post at the beginning of games before kind of the rookie nature starts showing in. And, end of the day, I think when it's kind of like a close game and when the games really count, it's going to be Draymond at the 5, Kuminga, Jimmy Butler, small ball, kind of things they've done over the years. You just wonder if they can still do it as these guys are getting older.
So here's the question. How much does this trade move the needle in terms of title contention this year if there's no more moves to be made?
The West is interesting in the sense of I think there's 12 or 13 playoff caliber teams, but I'm not convinced any of them, OKC included, is a juggernaut. Like, I think Boston's a juggernaut, even if they're kind of playing with their food half the games this season. Like
they killed the Knicks. Oh my God.
I'd even say the Knicks are probably a scarier team than a lot of the teams out west. Like, I think the East has more high-end great teams. The West has just a bunch of really good teams that, if they're peaking at the right time, can run the table. I think it does what the Warriors want, which is they should now make the playoffs. Without further moves, I'm not comfortable saying there's much more upside to it, but I think they're of the perspective of, see if we can get into the playoffs. Let's see what we can do. We have veterans who've proven they can win those games. I mean, Jimmy falls into line with that. He's been, one of the 5 best playoff players of the last half decade. And then they go into the offseason. You have a little more flexibility with free agency. See if you can get those final 1-2 pieces and wonder if you have one run in you given the guys' ages.
I think they could actually make some kind of run this offseason, but Jimmy's going to have to be really aggressive, especially with the second unit. Like, if he could look like Miami Heat playoff Jimmy, I mean, they could make a run with Dre playing and Steph playing. But, Jimmy, I've talked to people with Miami, like, he really doesn't care about stats at all. Like, he just wants to win. So if he has to drop 40, he'll do it, but he needs to be aggressive.
Yeah, and I think that showed in the first game. I mean, I'm a huge Jimmy Butler fan. I find myself rooting for Miami as my second team in the playoffs every year just because I just love the way they play. And if you watch him, you're like, oh, he plays Warriors basketball. Steve Kerr's going to love him. He's a willing passer. He could score the ball, but it's not the first thing he's looking to do. And that was honestly what showed in the Chicago game. I think he passed up like 5 easy shots trying to get other guys going, but a lot of that was just feeling out his teammates, passing to Buddy Hield cutting. Buddy misses the layup. Maybe he'll take a mental note that maybe I should have just taken that shot instead. But, all the things you'd expect when you're feeling out new teammates, right?
Yeah, most definitely. The Warriors don't move off Kuminga, which is really interesting. He's been in trade talks forever. Everyone thought the reason they started him was to, boost the trade value. Moody stays. It seems like a win-win when you're keeping these 2 young players on the team and you get Jimmy Butler.
I mean, I'd venture to say, like, they're the 2 who stand to gain the most from Jimmy being there.
Okay.
Like, Kuminga, they really need Kuminga to kind of be more consistent and be kind of the best version of himself because they desperately need an athlete with size. Mm-hmm. And he kind of profiles as your best option on this roster. So, the pessimist would say, okay, Jimmy, Kuminga, Draymond, not a lot of outside shooting with those 3. Those are 3 guys that defenses are going to sag off of 10 feet, kind of that. The optimist would say Jimmy is a playmaker that they really haven't had on the roster. They haven't really had anyone over 6'3" who can get their own shot, who can create offense for others. And Kuminga is very much a work in progress that way. So maybe having someone like Jimmy who can set him up, it can get him going, get him even easier shots. And then also just like the combination of Jimmy and Draymond's defensive IQ should make the game easier for him, should make it so that they play, I don't know, the Lakers. His only responsibility is like guard. Okay, that's a bad example. Guard Luka is not easy. But you know what I mean? Like his responsibility gets simplified to like, I just want you to guard the other team's best wing. Don't worry about like, quarterbacking the defense from the power forward position or some of the things that they kind of asked him to do that was really unfair in some ways.
I heard they were simplifying the offense for guys like Kuminga and Moody earlier in the season, right?
Yeah, but everything tends to devolve back to you play off of Steph Curry. So it's like...
It's in the nature. It's just in the nature.
I mean, the thing that makes the Warriors great over the years is just kind of like the improvisational style. And it's really just like, can you read and react to Steph's movement? Which is not easy, which is, I have no doubt Jimmy can do it because he's a veteran. He's been around the league. It should be pretty easy for him to pick up. But that's not an easy ask for like a 21, 22-year-old, which has been kind of the crux of their whole 2 timeline thing. It's like you're asking Kuminga to think the game in a way that a 30-year-old does, not a 20-year-old.
Well, the 2 timeline thing actually worked because they won a championship, even though Wiggins isn't with the Warriors anymore.
Did it work, though? Because
you won a championship.
None of the second timeline played in the playoffs. Kuminga didn't play in the playoffs. I mean, to be fair, they're rookies, but like, did they win because of the 2 timelines, or did they win in spite of it? Was that just kind of like Steph, Draymond, Clay, kind of like their last hurrah as like main guys, and they just haven't evolved since then as an organization?
Well, you don't know if it totally worked until you see how Moody and Kuminga develop. Because I mean, Kuminga's 22 years old. What do you think his ceiling is at this point?
I don't think he'll be Jimmy Butler, but I think that's a player he should model his game after because there's some skill set similarities, like just the strength, the inability to keep him out of the post. Like one thing that's kind of lamented is like the Warriors should get him the ball in the post more. He's too quick and too strong for most people who guard him. I'm more bullish on his ability to figure out kind of ball handling and really being a guy who can get to the line 8 to 10 times a game than like turning into a splash brother or something like that. So I don't know if he'll end up being as good as Jimmy, and I would bet against him ever being as good as like Miami playoff Jimmy, just because that's a special player. But like, I think that's kind of what he will end up developing into when he's 26, 27, 28, that type of downhill wing who gets you in foul trouble nonstop.
Is Steph Curry still in his prime?
Let me watch another 10 games because he did not look good for most of the first part of the season. Now, he has a knee tendonitis issue, but the flip side to that is that happens when you get older. That's kind of what leads to decline. Your joints start hurting, you get a little slower. He looked like he had a little extra pep in his step when Jimmy came. And there's been a floating theory that he's been trying to preserve himself until they make a trade because they really had no offensive support for him in general. So give me another 10 or so games. I'll let you know if I buy the theory that he was preserving himself or that he's really lost a step since last year.
Have you been hearing the Seth Curry buzz?
Is he getting bought out?
I think he might be getting bought out. Would that be interesting for the Warriors? More shooting?
I mean, they need shooting. They need both athleticism and shooting, and ideally they need players who do both those things. The problem is guys who do both those things never get bought out because they're really valuable. So I would take Seth. They've really struggled shooting the ball from outside, which is weird to say with the Warriors team, but if you look at the roster up and down, it's not a lot of proven shooters. Buddy Hield's a shooter, but everyone else is working through their shooting.
All right, I have to take you back. What was your reaction when Mavericks traded prime Luka Doncic to the Lakers for AD, who I can't believe it, Sam. This guy got injured in the first game. I wish we could take injuries off, but that makes things even seem like worse now than it was.
I saw the reports that he's going to miss a month, and I'm sitting here going, oh, God. It might be the worst case scenario for Nico Harrison. He makes this trade. Kyrie and AD have injury-plagued second halves, and they miss the playoffs. Not a worse possibility for Dallas. I was like everyone else. I thought Shams got hacked. I looked at it. I was like, no, what are we talking about? Because first off, I wouldn't have traded Luka for basically anything, just given his age and the fact that you knew he was going to resign. But the second part of it is you simply don't see players as notable as him get traded with zero buzz. Were you under the impression that he was available? I wasn't.
No.
I was shocked. When I heard KD was potentially getting traded or Jimmy was getting traded, makes sense. You've been hearing for a year about rumblings, or in Jimmy's case, he's just outright suspended, right? In Luka's case, the most out of left field trade I can think of.
You mentioned KD. Would you have liked to see a reunion more than the Jimmy trade?
I don't know if more. Well, yeah, probably, because he's a better player. It's really that simple for me. It would have been fun for Warrior fans if he came back. Obviously, one of the greatest of all time. Not really worried about him fitting into the system. He fits into any system he wants to play in, right? It would have been great. It would have also been great for Warrior fans because it's, he left, he came back. I can also completely understand why he's like, I don't want to do that right now. So I never really thought it was realistic. And then it gets really loud and, I got my hopes up that it could be real. Ultimately, I'm happy.
Go 5 more.
Perfect.
Yeah. Ben Simmons to the Clippers. I mean, they lost some point guards. Can Coach Luke get to figure this out? Get a championship here?
Next question.
You don't think it impacts at all? You don't think it impacts that team at all?
Has he? How much has he even been playing?
He's been playing.
He's obviously the talent is the talent. I guess he helps them a little bit. How about wait and see? How's that for an answer? Let me see it. I don't know. I thought it was kind of a throwaway move and maybe a move for them to get him in-house so they could sign him and really start rebuilding his career for next year. I don't hate the gamble.
Yeah.
He is talented. He is young. Maybe a new situation. Fresh summer is the type of thing that kind of gets him back to being what he used to be in Philly before it all fell apart.
Are they legit from what you see with Kawhi and James Harden and Norman Powell?
I think they're legit. I think they're an excellent team. I mean, like the Warriors, older stars, and unlike the Warriors, Kawhi's obviously had very iffy health over the years, but do you want to play that team if they're fully healthy in the playoffs? No. They have the perfect cast of role players to put around two older stars. I was talking about that with the Warriors. I would love if the Warriors had Derek Jones Jr., Zubac, younger legs who really fill the gaps and do the things that maybe is unrealistic to ask of a 35-year-old James Harden or a 18 knee repairs later Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah. It's a good time for the Bay All-Star Game is heading there. Do you feel San Francisco or the Bay Area in general is a perfect place for an All-Star Game? Nice weather?
I mean, the Chase Center, I'm excited because it opened right before the pandemic, which really sucked because the arena itself is nice. All new arenas are nice, but they really wanted to build this kind of village around it, make it a whole, like, you know, you go to the game 2 hours early. There's stuff to do. There's stuff to do after the game. And, you know, when COVID and all that happened, all that got put on the side. So, it's, you know, they just started opening stuff over the last couple years there. I think it's going to be really good. It's right on the water. There's a bunch of fun restaurants, you know, like bars, stuff like that around it. I think it's going to be a good time.
And do you like the rule changes to the All-Star game? It's pickup style, right?
I don't. I guess I'm somewhere in the middle on it. Like, in general, it feels gimmicky and hard for me to follow. Like, who's on what team? You know, it's very easy. It's like East, West, okay? You know, James Harden, West. You know, Jason Tatum, East. You know, very easy. Now I'm like, who's on whose team? What's going on there? But with that said, like, the last few All-Star games have been such snoozers. Like, I'm in favor of shaking it up because the last thing I need to see is the same thing I saw last year, which was 250 threes and, you know, just kind of a pickup ball would be a compliment to what we've seen the last couple of years. There's more intensity in an average pickup game than that.
Yeah, well, it's good. Steph is starting, and he's gonna like be leading things off, and it's gonna be great to see him as a host, right? There hasn't been an All-Star game in the Bay for a while, right?
25 years ago, the Vince Carter dunk contest.
Wow, that was amazing.
Was at the old Oracle Arena. I mean, that was our kind of claim to fame in the NBA world for about 20 years, up until that We Believe team put together a playoff run. If you remember the Warriors from like Run TMC to We Believe, just, you know, 60 losses and that one dunk contest. That's about all we had for a while there. Obviously, things have changed. No one's going to feel sorry for us anymore. But yeah, pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be a pretty fun weekend.
Thanks so much for taking the time. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the Bay, man. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate you, man. Yeah. If you need me to